what I'm saying for me is that that's not a diagnosis that I want to make a part of my identity.
I hear
I
you.
don't. No, I'm just. Yeah. So, and you know what? It's funny because I talk in a lot of these uh, talks that I do. I mean, I just gave a mental health talk to the American Correctional Association. It's like 1,500 correctional officers,
Right.
and talking about my mom's experience, talking about my experience growing up, offering my perspective and thoughts about things. And and one of the things that I talk about is language, and how language is. I mean, the mental health field, the psychiatry in particular, has come so far. I mean, my mom's thing was we have to destigmatize, and you even see it now. That NFL football ad was so great about destigmatizing it and everything else. But not but also in a way, that project of destigmatizing has worked in a lot of areas. Maybe not in all areas, but if you go to Indiana, where my wife is from, people are more than comfortable talking about their medications. And I've got to go
Yeah.
to CVS to get my medication. I have, and somehow it's like it's a little bit more socially acceptable now for people to use that phrase, and that should be encouraging to anybody who has an issue that, like, oh, there's a lot of places in this world you can go where you are where someone with that diagnosis is fully understood and accepted to be a total human being, and it's not going to limit your life.
And that's exciting.
That's
That's
exciting. It's
exciting.
thrilling. But the vocabulary of psychiatry actually, in a lot of ways, is meant to be used between physicians and the drug world, and pharmaceutical world, and the nursing community, and administrative people. And there's a lot of people for whom the vocabulary of mental illness is really efficient and proper and throw and everything else, but it totally fucks up a lot of people. Actual human beings who are actually being diagnosed, because in a lot of ways it's like a death sentence for people. It feels
It's like a
that.
brand, like branding. It's like this. You're labeled. This is who you are.
Well, that, but also just they call one of the words is patient. You're a mental health patient, but you're also they use the word sufferer. Oh, this person's a mental health sufferer, and you're like, Jesus Christ, how is anybody supposed to develop like wellness in their life if they're constantly thinking of themselves indefinitely as a patient or indefinitely as
I
a
agree.
sufferer? Like, that vocabulary is not helpful. That people
It is
shouldn't
not. Sufferer is not something people want to associate themselves with. I am a sufferer.
And survivor and recovery, and like those words can be very, very helpful and very empowering and very useful, particularly at certain phases of people's discovery of their own like wellness strategy. But for a lot of people, it makes it so they don't want to get a diagnosis. They don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to consider the types of medications that might be available to them. They don't want to consider it because they just don't like the vibe. And to me, the community could do itself a big service by acknowledging that its communication skills are like the lagging thing in their progress. Right. And so what I was saying was, in terms of stigma, it actually is still there in a way. Like if you have your druthers, pick that talk about that diagnosis or not. I get a lot of positive feedback when I say to people, when they ask me what you're asking me, like, you don't have to, and relative to my kids, relative to anybody, you don't have to tell anyone what your diagnosis is. First thing, the willingness, the bravery it takes to put yourself up for some kind of evaluation to see if some sort of diagnosis is, appropriate for you. That takes courage. It's terrifying for people to do that. But doing that and then getting the diagnosis, that's just the doctor's half of the equation. You have to accept the diagnosis. And if you're willing, if the diagnosis isn't right for you and you don't accept it, good for you that you went through a process where you are more armed with information than you were beforehand. If you get a diagnosis and you're willing to accept it because it's helpful to you, then that's great too.
Yeah, I agree with
But
that.
then when it comes time to sharing your process and your experience, some people aren't like us. Some people don't feel good. Some people's work environment, for example, is not conducive. If you were to, you may be legally protected, but it might make people uncomfortable because they have some, who knows what. So you people have to decide for themselves